Happy Sabbath. How are you all? I hope you all had a wonderful week. Enjoy the outdoor, beautiful, beautiful weather. Tonight, I continue to ask the Lord to bless each one of you. May He give you love, joy, and peace. Last week, we studied chapter 25, and it was about Abraham remarried, and Isaac and Rebekah gave birth to twins. Today, we are going to study chapter 26, although the previous chapter had mentioned Isaac, but they were mainly about Abraham. However, this chapter's focus is solely on Isaac. It is about Isaac's journeying on with the guidance of God. Let's start reading. Verse 1. Now there was a famine in the land, besides the former famine that was in the days of Abraham. And Isaac went to Gerar to Abimelech, king of the Philistines. And the Lord appeared to him and said, "Do not go down to Egypt. Dwell in the land of which I shall tell you. Sojourn in this land, and I will be with you and will bless you. For to you and to your offspring I will give all these lands, and I will establish the oath that I swore to Abraham your father. I will multiply your offspring as the stars of heaven, and will give to your offspring all these lands. And in your offspring all the nations of the earth shall be blessed, because Abraham obeyed my voice and kept my charge, my commandments, my statutes, and my laws." The events in this chapter are difficult to decide when it all happened. But from reading the different commentaries, I guess they probably took place after the death of Abraham, when Esau and Jacob were young adults. The narrative began with a famine. Famine indicates a general scarcity of food, perhaps because of drought, because of war, hail, flood, or insect. The famine that it mentioned here was not the same one that forced Abraham to go to Egypt. It was another famine. That means it happened again. So Isaac had to leave Beer Laharoi to find a place that has sufficient food and water for his family and herds. And according to the verse, it seems like he was on his way to Egypt, and maybe he was just taking a rest at Gerar. And there, God told him, either in a dream or vision, not to go to Egypt. So why did God stop him from going to Egypt? The Bible didn't mention. Perhaps because Egypt had not been a good place for Abraham. It was at Egypt that Abraham and Sarah had problem with Pharaoh. And it was at Egypt that Abraham and Sarah acquired Hagar as a gift, and consequentially began the family feud that lasted a long, long time, even until today. So God told Isaac to dwell in the land of which I shall tell you. But God didn't tell him where at this point. And after God gave Isaac the instruction, the Bible said he blessed Isaac as he had blessed Abraham. God told Isaac that he will be with him and his offspring, and he will give him the lands that he had promised to Abraham. And that through him, his offspring, all the nations of the earth shall be blessed. We observe that God's blessing for Abraham was reaching into the next generations and touching the lives of Isaac, blessing him with lands, with offsprings. Because why? Because Abraham had obeyed my voice, God said, and kept my charge, my commandments, my statute, and my laws. Well, we know that Abraham was not perfect. As a human, he didn't have the complete understanding. Therefore, he made mistakes. But he was faithful, completely faithful to God. And that measure of faith also passed on to his son Isaac. Verse 6. So Isaac settled in Gerar. When the man of the place asked him about his wife, he said, "She is my sister." For he feared to say my wife, thinking lest the man of the place should kill me because of Rebekah, because she was attractive in appearance. When he had been there a long time, Abimelech, king of the Philistines, looked out of a window and saw Isaac laughing with Rebekah, his wife. Well, this laughing here has a tinge of intimacy. So Abimelech called Isaac and said, "Behold, she is your wife. How then could you say, 'She is my sister'?" Isaac said to him, "Because I thought lest I die because of her." Abimelech said, "What is this you have done to us? One of the people might easily have lain with your wife, and you would have brought guilt upon us." So Abimelech warned all the people, saying, "Whoever touched this man or his wife shall surely be put to death." Well, just a side note, the Abimelech in this passage is not the same Abimelech that Abraham met 90 years ago. The king of Gerar are called Abimelech, just like kings of Egypt are called pharaohs. There are several similarities between Isaac and Abraham in this section. Just as Abraham stayed in Gerar in chapter 20, so also did Isaac. Just as Abraham once devised a scheme with his wife Sarah, calling her his sister, so also did Isaac with Rebekah. Just as Abraham was scolded by Abimelech for the great shame he might have brought on his people, so also was Isaac. Do you think such similarities are divinely guided? For sure, I don't think it was coincidental. Perhaps this is my own theory. God knew that Abraham had passed on to his son not only his strength, but also his weakness. Therefore, God provided similar experiences to Isaac to learn. However, this Abimelech seems to be more righteous than his predecessor. God had to tell the previous Abimelech not to touch Abraham's wife, but this Abimelech himself forbade anyone to touch Isaac's wife. He even told his people that if anyone molests Isaac or his wife, he or they shall surely be put to death. In fact, he said that he feared great guilt may come upon his people. However, the picture in the narrative changed. Let's read on. Verse 12. And Isaac sowed in that land and reaped in that same year 100-fold. The Lord blessed him. And the man became rich and gained more and more until he became very wealthy. Just as Father Abraham, who prospered while sojourning among the Gentiles, so Isaac also prospered while sojourning with Abimelech. The source of Isaac's wealth was from God. This passage said the Lord blessed him. And this is the second time this chapter commented about Isaac being blessed by God. Apparently, it is to emphasize the connection between Isaac's prosperity and God's promise to Abraham back in chapter 12. That God promised to Abraham is now fulfilled with Isaac. Verse 14. He had possessions of flocks and herds and many servants, so that the Philistines envied him. Now the Philistines had stopped and filled with earth all the wells that his father's servant had dug in the days of Abraham his father. And Abimelech said to Isaac, "Go away from us, for you are much mightier than we." So Isaac departed from there and encamped in the valley of Gerar and settled there. And Isaac dug again the wells of water that had been dug in the days of Abraham his father, which the Philistines had stopped after the death of Abraham. And he gave them the names that his father had given them. But when Isaac's servant dug in the valley and found there a well of spring water, the herdsman Gerar quarreled with Isaac's herdsmen, saying, "The water is ours." So he called the name of the well Esek, because they contended with him. Then they dug another well, and they quarreled over that also. So he called its name Sitnah. And he moved from there and dug another well, and they did not quarrel over it. So he called its name Rehoboth, saying, "For now the Lord has made room for us, and we shall be fruitful in the land." Now all the wells which his father's servant had dug years ago, the people at Gerar stopped up by filling them with earth. Do you know that digging a well was considered tantamount to a claim of ownership of the land on which it was located? When you dig a well with running water, you live there because you needed the water to sustain the herds. The people in Gerar didn't want to recognize this claim, so they filled up the wells that were dug by Abraham. And the purpose was to overthrow all Abraham's claim on their land. Well, wells were assets of great value in such an arid or dry land. Can you imagine they would go to such effort? So we observe here that the people at Gerar were causing great hardship for Isaac over the wells. Abimelech seems to have changed. A while ago, he protected Isaac and his wife, but now he dispelled Isaac from his land. Wealth was the culprit. Abimelech and his people resented Isaac's great wealth and feared that he would take what they had. They tried to weaken him by closing the wells he had inherited from his father. You see, wells represented Isaac's ability to sustain his wealth, which consisted of flocks, herds, and servants, all of which needed secure sources of water. Isaac went away, and again he tried to clear out wells that his father had dug. And the local people gave him a hard time again, so he moved on and dug other well. And there was dispute again. He didn't fight over it, and he moved away peaceably. As Isaac traveled further and further away to dig new wells, fighting stopped. There was no more fighting over the last well. And so he named it Rehoboth, because finally there is sufficient water for everyone, and we will flourish in the land. Let's read verse 23. From there he went up to Beersheba, and the Lord appeared to him the same night and said, "I am the God of Abraham your father. Fear not, for I am with you and will bless you and multiply your offspring for my servant Abraham's sake." So he built an altar there and called upon the name of the Lord and pitched his tent there. And there Isaac's servants dug a well. Here, a very strange thing happened. Up to this time, Isaac's decision to find a place to live was based upon the finding of abundant water and the absence of hostilities, right? But now, having dug a well that was uncontested, we would have expected Isaac to stay there, right? But instead, we are told that he moved on. He moved on to Beersheba with no reason stated. Well, scholars believe that a significant change has occurred in Isaac's thinking. Circumstances had previously shaped most of his decisions, but now something deeper and more noble seems to be giving direction in his life. Beersheba was the first place that Abraham had gone with Isaac after they came down from Mount Moriah, the sacrifice. Isaac knew that God had promised to give him the land promised to his father Abraham. I believe he had finally come to see that through all the oppositions over the wells he had dug, God was actually guiding him back to the land of promise, back to those places where Abraham had walked in fellowship with God. So his decision to go up to Beersheba was the right decision, because God immediately spoke words of reassurance to him, just as he did with Abraham after he had separated from Lot. And this is the third time in this chapter the Lord blessed Isaac. Like his father, Isaac responded by building an altar and worshiping God. Let's read verse 26. When Abimelech went to him from Gerar with Ahuzzath, his advisor, and Phicol, the commander of his army, Isaac said to them, "Why have you come to me, seeing that you hate me and have sent me away from you?" They said, "We see plainly that the Lord had been with you." So we said, "Let there be a sworn pact between us, between you and us, and let us make a covenant with you, that you will do us no harm, just as we have not touched you, and have done to you nothing but good, and have sent you away in peace. You are now the blessed of the Lord." So he made them a feast, and they ate and drank. In the morning they rose early and exchanged oaths, and Isaac sent them on their way, and they departed from him in peace. Years ago, the other Abimelech acknowledged God's presence with Abraham and begged to enter into a covenant with him. Here, likewise, Abimelech also acknowledged the Lord's presence with Isaac and sought to enter into a covenant with him. Isaac, like his father, became the source of blessing to those who seek him out. And Isaac, like his father, trusted God and lived in peace with his neighbors. Now, verse 32. That same day, Isaac's servant came and told him about the well that they had dug, and said to him, "We have found water." He called it Sheba. Therefore, the name of the city is Beersheba to this day. The final picture Isaac here concludes with the account of the discovery of a new well on the same day that Isaac had made peace with his neighbor Abimelech and his people. Consequently, the name of the well became the name of the city Beersheba. And Beersheba meaning is well of oath. Let's read verse 34. When Esau was 40 years old, he took Judith, the daughter of Beeri, the Hittite, to be his wife, and Basemath, the daughter of Elon, the Hittite. And they made life bitter for Isaac and Rebekah. Isaac's son, one of his sons, Esau, married two heathen women. It says they were Hittites. They were Gentiles or heathens. They made life bitter for Isaac and Rebekah. This short 2 verses will make the background for the next chapter, chapter 27. In conclusion, what does this chapter tell us about God's character? Our God is a God of wisdom. He doesn't stick to one method to guide his people. In this narrative, we observed he used different circumstances to guide Isaac back to the land that he promised Abraham, the land where he had fellowship with Abraham. Why didn't God punish Abraham and Isaac for being deceptive, lying about their wives? Well, this is another place that we see what God is like. We can see God's character. A theologian, Bob Devenbaugh, said, "I think I'm slowly beginning to understand the reason deception is sin. And God hates the lying tongue. But lying here was the symptomatic sin and not the root sin. God did not smash the red warning light because he was concerned about getting to the root of the problem. The root sin, as I perceive it, was unbelief or lack of faith. In each case of deception, Abraham and Isaac lied out of fear. And this fear was the product of an inadequate concept of God. They did not grasp the sovereignty or the omnipotence of God in such a way as to believe that God could protect them under any and every circumstance. Having solved the problem of too little faith, the sin of deception will not be an issue any longer. God understands his people, and he is very patient. So what does this chapter tell us about human nature, and how shall we live? Children often make the same mistakes as their parents. Why? Besides our genetic connection, from the moment we open our eyes, we're absorbing our parents' point of view and entire way of being in this world. Our parents can impact our lives in all kinds of ways that we may not expect. And perhaps that was the case with Isaac. We can best help our own children by making certain that our footsteps are such that we would want our children to walk in them. If Isaac's experience was to some degree a reflection of his father's life, what a frightening thought that is. If our children's life are to mirror our own, what an awesome responsibility we have as parents to walk a path of obedience and submission to the will of God.